As you've probably just noticed, we've finalised our negotiations on what I'm going to speak about this evening. And so now I'll get started. Let me start by saying what I'm not going to speak about. I'm not going to give you a list of things where you can go and find speeches and find topics to speak on. You'll find these adequately covered if you go into the Competent Communications Manual. And if you go into Project 2, nice little list down here, about a quarter of a page, a good place to get started. What some people may have forgotten is if you then go back into the appendix, there is another page of topic suggestions. So there's lots of places you can go looking for ideas on things to speak about. But I am resolved to speak on a slightly different aspect of selecting your topic. First, I want to consider how important is your topic selection to the success of your speech. Is it very important? Is it in the top 5% of things you have to consider? The top 25, the top 50? Where does it sit? Because let's face it, you're going to have to allocate your time in preparing your speech. And if the selection of the topic makes very little difference, then you should spend very little time on it. But if it makes a big difference, then you should spend a lot of time. And I want to consider that. I then want to share a secret from accomplished speakers versus novices. For those of you less familiar with the English language, a novice is a beginner at something. Somebody who's in their early stages of development. We call them novices. And accomplished, experienced speakers have a different way of thinking about topic selection from your average novice. And that difference is important to their success. Then I want to conclude with the challenges to novices and to the more experienced speakers in the room. Time permitting, if we have a minute or two left, I will then be prepared to answer any questions. I want you to think about presentations that you have sat in, that you have attended over the last couple of years. And I want you to think about a couple of these that have seriously impressed you. They're seriously memorable occasions, and hopefully for the right reasons. Did the choice of topic have any serious impact on the success of those presentations? It's a really interesting question. And I'm going to come back to that shortly. How many of you think that the choice of topic was not important at all to the success of the presentation? So we've got 2, 4, 6 in one hand deciding whether to join in or not. So somewhere between 6 or 7 out of 16 of us, the topic wasn't important at all. We went in there, we think this was very successful, but the presenter could have been talking about anything. How many of you think that the choice of topic was important? So we have 8 thinking the choice of topic is important, 7 thinking it's not important. We've got a split audience here. And by the way, you can vote more than once if you like. It's not a school examination. How many of you think the choice of topic was very important to the success of the presentation? We're getting down to the hardcore here. How many of you think it was absolutely critical to the success of the presentation? Nobody. Interesting. Now I want you, and I will share the expert view on this with you in a few moments. Now I want you to think about a good speaker, somebody that you think is really good as a speaker. Could be a politician, could be anybody you like. In fact, it could be, who's the best speaker in the club? Just want you to have that image in your mind. And I want you to think about a couple of the speeches that they have given recently that were successful, because clearly you think these people are good, they must be successful. Now I want you to think about, can you remember what they talked about? It's a really interesting question. If the choice of topic is very important to the success and to the claim that hopefully you will get in future years for being a good speaker, then you would expect somebody to remember something about it, wouldn't you? We come here every couple of weeks. We hear some very fine speakers. I also look at the Professional Speakers Association, and more on that later. Again, some world-class speakers. But then if you ask me, how many of these did I remember? That would be an interesting question to me. So, why is it that we're in that situation? Now, when I was first asked to speak in an education session on the topic of selecting topics, nice mouthful, isn't it? I tell the truth, I thought this would be a dawdle. If I had not thought it was going to be a dawdle, I would have said no. I thought this would be a stroll in the park. What do I do? I'll go to the Competent Communications Manual, and it will say a lot about selecting topics, because I think this might be important. And then I have this wonderful bundle of books I got on the recommendation of Toastmasters International that said, if you master all of these, what do you learn here? My students master much more than this in their courses. If you master all of these, you will become a good speaker. I thought, great. I'll go through here, I'll pick out all the points relevant to selecting topics, and all I have to do is play this back and everybody will be happy. So I go into 101 ways to improve your communication skills instantly. Now these people are experts. By the way, there are lots of good things in these books. There are lots of things that are worth dipping into. And what did they say about selecting your topic? 0. Maybe just a minute. I'm going to be a brilliant communicator. Nothing about. Lend me your ears, by Professor Matt Atkinson. For any of you who were at the event in Glasgow last year, Matt Atkinson was the keynote speaker. Very excellent speaker. So clearly, if this choice of topic is important, it's going to be in his book. It is in his book. A little bit. On page 280. Page 280. What he's telling you is there are 279 pages of things in here that are more important to being a successful speaker than choosing your topic. Interestingly, I go to the exceptional presenter. I find them halfway through here before they want to talk about topics and so on. And so I can go on and on and on. Surprising, you're starting to think here, just a minute. What's going on here? You've got all of these people, all of these authorities, and yet none of these authorities seem to think the choice of topic is of any major importance. Why then do novices to speaking agonize endlessly over the choice of topic? And you do when you start, don't you? You're there, you're sitting down with your blank sheet of paper, and you say, I've got to go and I've got to speak for 5 or 6 minutes. What on earth am I going to speak to anybody about? The icebreaker, of course, is easy. You've given some guidance. Your second project, comparatively easy. You've given a list of places where you might go to look for a topic. But from then on, largely you're on your own. Now, the novice speaker, of course, has a series of issues, a series of problems to overcome. One of those is actually psychological. We want, as a novice, to impress the people round about us. We want a subject or a topic that will make us look interesting. And people will go, wow, wasn't that a great choice of topic? Although I must admit, in a lifetime of listening to speakers, I've very rarely heard anybody say, wow, that was an interesting topic. I have heard people say, that was a good presenter. But the novice thinks, I've got to choose something really special, something different, something that's going to make its mark. Part of this, of course, lies deep in psychological space. What's going on inside that particular space? Now, I'm not an expert here. I know just enough to be dangerous. The novice speaker is saying to themselves, I'm not very interesting as a person. And what I have to talk about is not very interesting. What it is nobody's going to want to listen to what I've got to say. And that little demon eats away at a lot of people. It's so they get more and more fearful about speaking. What's really going on? So I ask them, how do you know you're not interesting? Seems a fair question, doesn't it? And they'll say, well, when I'm talking, other people always butt in. And then they never listen to the end of my story. Conclusion, I'm not interesting, I have nothing interesting to say. Wrong. Very, very wrong, the research will tell us. The problem is not that people are uninteresting. I've yet to find a single human being that if I listen long enough, doesn't have some interesting stories to tell me. If I have the patience to listen. One of the biggest problems we have in our society, and it's been there for some time, is that people do not listen. They want to jump in and throw their bits in. But it's misinterpreted as, I'm not an interesting person, I have nothing for anybody to be interested in listening to. Absolutely wrong. It's inside our own imagination, our own fears. And of course, fear is just false expectations assumed real. The more it happens to you, the more you believe this is the way life is. And it's not. So here we have the novice speaker, with all their fears and things going on underneath. And then let's come to the accomplished speaker. And we'll share their secret. They do not worry whatsoever about whether people will be interested or not. That is not where they start from. The accomplished speaker starts from their audience. Who am I going to be speaking to? What are the age of the audience? What are the backgrounds? They get as much information as they can before selecting their topic. Now, I remember being asked to go and give a presentation. I also, by the way, am an accountant. And a qualified accountant, and we'll be having a word with your institute after we finish our meeting. So we were into, I diverted, and I absolutely should not. So the accomplished speaker thinks about their audience. They get as much detail as they can. Now, what the accomplished speaker does is addresses the wants and needs of their audience, irrespective of the subject they are asked to talk on. They will get a theme around things. Tony Blair was an expert at this. Brilliant politician when it came to speaking, irrespective of the subject he was given to speak on. He knew what he wanted to say, he knew how he wanted to communicate with his audience, and that is what he did. And the audience loved it, even if afterwards they couldn't remember what it meant. Which is not an unusual thing. One of the things the psychologists will tell you is people do not, generally speaking, remember the detail of presentations, or by the way of movies or books they've read. They come up with a general impression. They have a feeling, a sense of something was good, it was worth listening to, it was entertaining, or it wasn't. They have a sense of these things. The accomplished speaker knows that what he or she has to do is to get individuals to have that same sense at the end of their presentation. To some extent, the topic is irrelevant. David here did a fine poetry reading today. If he had picked something else altogether, I'm sure we would have found David still very entertaining. I've listened to David on a number of occasions, as we all have. I would say, David would be there. I'll bet David could do a pretty good speech on watching paint dry on the wall. You know, but at the end of it, we'd all come out and say, yeah. So what I'm getting to here is the topic to some extent. Oh yes, if you've got a useful, amusing topic or whatever, it can be helpful. But it's not the key to your success as a public speaker. The key to your success is in the performance. And this is what novices get wrong. They think it's the content, it's the subject that's important. No, it's not, it's the performance. Can you get up here and sing and dance? If you can, do it. Some people do that well. If you're a more sober or somber person, you can still get your message across. Concentrate on your audience. What does my audience want? What does it need? And so I'll leave a couple of challenges, as I think I should, to the novices amongst you. You come to this community every couple of weeks. You listen to them, right? How much time have you spent analysing the people around you? How much time do you spend saying, some of these people are quite old? Well, I'm speaking on my own behalf there, not the rest of you youngsters. Some of them are quite young at the early stages of their career. Do you pick topics because they suit you, and either you like them, or you think they'll make you look good or important, or do you pick topics because you think they'll be important to your audience? You pick things that give you rapport with your audience, you will be successful almost every time. So I would recommend to you, spend some time in the weeks ahead analysing the people round about you. Me, the committee and everybody else, start thinking about, hey, how can I pick a topic that more closely matches their needs? For the accomplished speakers, a real challenge. And you know who you are, and there is no hiding. Choice of topics, can I suggest that you move away from the positions that many of you have just now. Many of them are a restricted number of subjects in which you are very good. Professional Speakers Associations say that if you are good, if you're an accomplished speaker, you can speak on any subject. How about extending your vocabulary? David, how about getting up sometime and talking about watching the paint dry on the wall and making it interesting? Pick things. What does the colour brown mean? Gee, I don't know. I just made it up. But you get the idea. A real challenge to an accomplished speaker, an experienced speaker. Pick things that are off the wall. And then see if you can make them interested and actually get your audience to come in with you. If you can do that, you know that you're a good speaker. Thank you for your attention. Do we have time for one or two questions?
No.